Greetings, audiophiles and Mass Effect fans. Welcome to my reading of my fanfiction, After the Fall. This is a Mass Effect fanfiction, and as such, most of the characters and the universe belong to BioWare/EA Games. No copyright infringement is intended. However, the scenario and occurrences within this fanfiction are my intellectual property, so if you decide you want to share this with someone, credit me. Please. Part 8. Communication. The trees were tall and dark. Mist swirled around her. Songs the color of oily shadows. Shepard. Lorelei. Voices whispered, called, even ordered her. She wanted to answer them, but she couldn't. She couldn't move. She stood mired in invisible quicksand. Her heart beat overtime, not with fear, but with anger. Her fists clenched. She knew this dream. She'd been prone to bad dreams all her life, vivid nightmares that would have started a weaker person weeping. As a child, she'd been chased by shadows, and her life in a gang did nothing to lessen them, only adding to her nighttime pain. Then, after she had finally outgrown those nightmares, there was a coos. Her men screaming for her, holding out their hands towards her, and she towards them, but it was never enough. They were ripped in half, devoured whole, shredded into bloody piles before her eyes. Drugs had always helped with the PTSD. She barely flinched when people touched her now, but the dreams would never end. Some nights on the Normandy she dreamed of Ashley, the young woman bleeding in the shallow water beside a bomb that would take her life. The water ran red as Shepard chose to save her lover, Kaidan, instead of her friend. Some nights she dreamed of the Collector base. Her people, brave to the last man. They'd all made it out except for Miranda. The cold part of Shepard thought that one loss was acceptable. Her gentler side scolded her for even considering that. Shepard looked around. He'd be here. She knew he would be. Finally, her dreams had shifted once again. New nightmares, nothing unusual there. After the fall of Earth, she saw that child. Now she knew that the catalyst had taken the form of the child. Why? To anger her? To confuse her? Had it reached into her mind and pulled that memory free? It must have, unless she had been indoctrinated. No, she could easily push that from her mind. Her team would have noticed if she was. Shepard. She turned. You. Her lip curled. Me, said the elusive man. His face was still scarred and twisted with the machinery that the Reapers had given him. You failed, Shepard. No, you did, she snarled, though in this dream her voice seemed small while his boomed. I failed, you failed, we both could not save humanity. It is humanity's destiny to fall. He was smiling his wily grin. Shepard loathed it. The Reapers are dead, she spat. You think so? The elusive man asked, eyebrow raised. What a pity. She was about to yell something at him, maybe call him a fucker, but she hesitated. Hadn't she suspected that very thing? Hadn't some part of her told her that they'd all been wrong? That the Reapers weren't done? What if the elusive man was correct? She heard someone else. She turned again, and the child was there. He looked up at her, small eyes filled with mirth, as he pointed at her and laughed. Shepard woke with a suddenness that made her wonder if she had been asleep at all. There seemed to be no transition from sleep to waking. She blinked as her quarters on the Normandy came clear before her eyes. The ship hummed reassuringly. She was overcome with a feeling of safety, true belonging. She moved, wincing, her legs stabbed with pain. She wondered if she would even be able to stand today. She glanced at her leg braces, discarded on the floor beside Garrus's shirt. She turned to see her Turian mate still slumbering at her side. Shepard smiled. All thoughts of her dream were pushed away as she studied the chiseled lines of Garrus' features. He slept, propped in a semi-upright position, as was natural for Turians. His breath was slow and even. The scarred side of his face was to her, and she traced the familiar grooves in his flesh with her eyes. He'd been right, she thought with a smile. After he'd been heard, he mentioned that some women found scars attractive. He wasn't far off. If there was one thing Shepard hated, it was perfection. She had even taken some small pride in knowing that her nose was crooked now. The features of a civilian were flawless. Those of a warrior, those had character. She reached out a hand and traced her finger gently around the scale-like plates on Garrus' chest. His skin was warm, though Turians tended to have slightly cooler body temperatures than humans. He stirred and looked around at her. His face broke into a broad smile at once. He took the hand which had been touching him and kissed it. "How'd you sleep?" he asked. "I had been hoping the bad dreams would stop once the Reapers were dead," she said honestly. He nodded. "Me too." She cocked her head at him. "You have nightmares too?" He gave her a sad look. "Of course. You don't go through what we've gone through, Shepard, and not have nightmares." "Time to take our pills, then," she laughed. Both she and Garrus were on medication, though she took meds for her PTSD and her pain, while he only took dextro antidepressants. He laughed, tossing his blanket aside with a dramatic flourish. She couldn't help but blush. He was completely nude. Come to it, so was she. This made her laugh as well as she watched him sort through the scattered clothing, trying to separate his from hers. As a joke, he pretended to try to pull on her dress blue jacket, causing the metals to jingle. "You'll rip it," she warned, still laughing, holding her ribs as they protested. Garrus located his clothes and dressed. "I'll have to bring some of my things here, so I don't have to wear the same clothes again," he said. She smiled fondly at him. She hadn't even needed to say it. He knew that he would be sharing her quarters from now on. He walked a little stiffly to her dresser. She felt a twinge of sadness knowing that he was still recovering from his own wounds from Earth. He distracted her easily by pulling out several clothing options for her to choose from. "I don't know much about human fashions, but I know you like red and black," he said as he worked. Shepard picked out a pair of dark green cargo pants, loose enough to accommodate her leg braces, a black t-shirt, and her N7 hoodie. As she dressed, Garrus helped her get her leg braces on. She already loathed them as instruments of torture. Garrus saw her face as he tightened the straps. "This wouldn't be so bad if you had used your canes yesterday," he scolded. "You know why I had to leave them," she said, her voice tight. Garrus rolled his eyes, but he didn't argue as he helped her stand. Her legs screamed with pain, and she had to try hard to remain quiet. Her teeth clamped together so tight she was sure they made a grinding sound. Garrus supported her until she had steadied herself, and the pain had subsided to a manageable throbbing. The two of them made their way slowly towards the lift. "Where to?" Garrus asked. "Medbay," Shepard said, tapping the button on the lift. "I need to know more about what the scientist was talking about." "I wonder if Liara managed to track someone down to help out." Garrus pondered aloud as they reached their destination. The crew deck was bustling. Chatter echoed off the curved walls. Shepard let the sound wash over her. A happy crew. That sound was music to any commander's ears. Tally was eating at a nearby table, across from Joker, Gabby, and Ken. She spotted Shepard and waved like a kid in a cafeteria who has just seen her best friend. Tally may have been an admiral, and even taken charge of a solar system full of frightened people, but she was still herself. Tally patted the spot beside her on the bench as Shepard and Garrus walked up. Joker looked Garrus up and down, no doubt noticing that he was wearing the same dress uniform as the day before, only significantly more wrinkled. Joker gave Shepard a subtle thumbs up. "Eat breakfast with us," Tally encouraged Shepard when the human did not sit. "I want to check in with Chakwas first," Shepard said. "Have we heard anything about getting another scientist up here to help out?" "We found someone," Joker said, around a giant mouthful of runny scrambled eggs. He wiped some of his breakfast out of his stubble. "Though I think you'll be a little surprised about who." "A Solarian, I expect," said Ken, stealing one of Gabby's toast halves while his fellow engineer was giggling over something with Tally. "Not quite." Joker's expression was mischievous. Shepard raised an eyebrow. "ETA?" she asked. "Not sure. Should be soon, though," Joker answered, swigging some grape juice. There was a sound from the lift, and everyone turned. "Well, shit," Garrus breathed, as what they could only assume was the requested scientist stepped into the room. Where chatter had filled the air, now only silence had its reign. Every eye was on the stranger. Hello, Shepard said. Her tone was cautious, and she couldn't stop her hand from drifting towards her hip, where her sidearm would have been holstered. Is that... Gabby managed to splutter. A Rachni, yeah, said Garrus. Someone dropped their coffee with a clatter and a splash. The creature stood, a little uneasily, half in and half out of the lift, blinking several eyes. In one of its many limbs it held what appeared to be a medical kit. Can our translators handle this? Shepard asked uneasily. Her mind searched her own personal knowledge. She spoke passable Turian and some Krogan, mostly swearing, but had no idea when it came to Rachni. The sound she had heard them make was more like shrieks and chattering versus language. Only the Queen could speak, using the corpses around her as vessels. No corpses here. I have my own. Shepard's head jerked back up to look at their visitor. The Rachni moved a limb to indicate a small device attached to the side of its head. Well then, Shepard said quickly, her instinct kicking in. As you were, she hissed toward her people, who took the hint quickly, though they still stared. Welcome to the Normandy. I'm Commander Shepard. A pleasure to meet you, said the Rachni, dipping its head. Its voice through its translator was gravelly and a little high-pitched. My name is the Sound of Water Over Stones. Most humans call me Stone, it continued good-naturedly. Well, nice to meet you, Stone, and let me be the first to thank you and your people for aiding us in our fight against the Reapers, Shepard said, putting on her best diplomatic air. The galaxy is our home as well, the Rachni replied simply. Shepard was struck by how well-spoken the creature was. It looked like some sort of bug dog, crouching on the floor and looking up at her with many eyes, but it sounded diplomatic as she. She couldn't help but smile. I was told you have an issue you were wishing for my assistance with, said Stone, tilting its head. I am the foremost geneticist amongst my people. The knowledge of the elders has colored my song. If Shepard looked confused by the last statement, the Rachni didn't notice. She gestured towards the medbay. I'll take you to a workstation, she said. Stone dipped its head in acknowledgement and followed Shepard's lead, its feet tick-ticking against the metal plating of the floor. The crew, who had been trying a little comically to go back to their conversation, stopped and stared once again. Shepard shot them a warning look as she, Garrus, and their guest stepped into the medbay. Inside, Shepard was a little surprised to see Kaidan, who was standing behind Chakwas at her main computer. Cadell was sitting on his bed, legs crossed with a laptop in front of him. His wrists were still bound, but his fingers worked busily on the keys. Kaidan spotted the Rachni and turned, unconsciously placing himself between the creature and Chakwas. His eyes were wide and alarmed. Sparks of biotic power jumped across Kaidan's open palms. Shepard raised her hands in a calming gesture. This is Stone. He... She hesitated, glancing at the Rachni. Stone didn't seem offended by the moment of confusion. I am a worker child, Stone explained. Therefore I am male. Females are very rare and are meant to become queens. Shepard nodded thankfully, then continued addressing her people. Chakwas had pivoted in her chair and was peering around Kaidan's hip. Cadell had stopped typing and was staring, mouth hanging open. He is a geneticist and has come to help substantiate Cerberus's claim about my immunity to indoctrination. I am very excited to investigate these claims, chirped Stone, setting down his pack and taking a few cautious steps forward. Which one of you is Dr. Chakwas? Chakwas wheeled her chair out from behind Kaidan. Of the group, she seemed the least alarmed. I am, and I've been hearing good things about the Rachni. Your people are brilliant engineers, but I had no idea you were scientists as well. Stone scuttled forward in a startling little spurt which made Kaidan jump. His biotics became orbs of energy around his hands, but he managed to stop himself from attacking. Kaidan, it's all right, Chakwas assured him, touching his elbow. I am sorry, Stone said, dipping his head and lowering his waving limbs. I forget that humans find us startling at times. I assure you I mean you and your vessel no harm. I have been personally working with humans researching the Crucible for many months. Please feel free to check my file. Kaidan seemed taken aback as he lowered the hand he had raised, no longer surrounded by swirling blue. I'm sorry, he mumbled uneasily. I am most interested to be working with you, Dr. Chakwas. Is it true that you were once inside a collector ship? Stone asked, approaching again, though this time being careful to move slowly. Soon Chakwas and the alien creature were chatting away amiably. Shepard shook her head and smiled. Her people never ceased to amaze her. Cadell, on the other hand, looked very uncomfortable. She walked over and stood beside his bed, joined by Caden and Garrus. She glanced at Caden. You all right? She asked. Yeah, he gave her a crooked smile. My head's still a little foggy this morning, so I came to get another dose of meds from Chakwas, and she had me hang around to help out. What are you up to? Garrus asked Cadell, eyeing the laptop in the Cerberus scientist's lap. Cadell rolled his pale blue eyes. Shepard noticed that they looked a little bloodshot and his cheeks were sunken. All in all, he looked unhealthy but determined. Cadell glanced at Stone, who was crouched beside Chakwas, avidly watching what she was showing him on her own computer. I was told you had a fondness for aliens on this ship, Cadell grumbled. I had no idea to what extent. You're on my ship, you deal with whoever I bring on board, Shepard warned. The Rachni are renowned for being indoctrinated. Their brains, as well as their link to one another, make them extremely easy prey for the Reapers. The geth are the same. Cadell shot Shepard a distrustful look. And I know you have a fondness for them as well. Shepard's hands clenched into fists, but she kept her temper under control. It wouldn't do them much good to beat the shit out of a scientist just yet. If his theories turned out to be lies, however, that would be a different matter. He had seen her tolerant, diplomatic side. If she had a chance, she'd show off her true feelings on Cerberus bullshit, and it would not be pleasant for Cadell. The scientist noticed that Garrus was still eyeing him suspiciously. He held up the laptop. It's not connected to your ship's network. I can't hack you or anything. I'm just looking over my research. Chakwas was kind enough to set me up. Garrus didn't stop glaring, but seemed satisfied. Cadell dipped his head and went back to work, though he shot a few more uneasy glances toward Stone and Chakwas. If I'm not needed, I think I'll join my crew for breakfast, Shepard announced to the room in general. Chakwas waved her arm without looking up from her work. Shepard smiled fondly at her friend and mentor. If she had thought of Anderson as her father, she definitely considered Chakwas to be her mother. So, shall we? She said to Caden and Garrus. Moments later found Shepard seated with Tali on one side and Garrus on the other, with Caden joining Joker, Gabby, and Ken on the other side of the table. They asked her eager questions about the Rachni, about what research they might be doing, and about the Cerberus scientist. Shepard deflected most of the questions, not wanting to have rumors flying all over her ship. As Shepard evaded the questions and shoveled breakfast rations into her mouth, she watched Tali. Could it be that she had the same genetic defect in her brain that Shepard did? Was it possible that the two women could be the true genetic enemies of the Reapers? Soon the topic of conversation veered, and the dining area was as noisy as ever. Shepard ate and reveled in the sound of her crew. It felt great to have her people all around her, like being wrapped in a warm, familiar blanket. All her years on Earth growing up, all her time in the Alliance, she had never managed to be as happy as she felt with her crew on the Normandy. She knew better than to think it could last forever, but she allowed herself to fully enjoy it in the moment. Shepard. Liara was behind her, gently touching Shepard's shoulder. Liara, do you want some breakfast? Shepard asked, scooting to make room for the Asari on the bench. Later. Liara gave Shepard a forced smile. What's up? Shepard stood, though a little too quickly. Her legs twinged dangerously, and she almost fell back onto her seat. Garrus quickly grabbed her arm to keep her upright. Can we talk in my office? Liara asked. Of course. Shepard let Garrus help her swing her legs over the bench. He handed her a piece of jellied toast as she moved to follow her Asari friend. Liara led the way into her office. Inside it seemed too quiet. The many screens Liara used to keep track of her shadow broker contacts were dead. Glyph, Liara's information drone, hummed a little sadly in a corner, though it did chirp, "Greetings, Commander," as the two women entered. What's up, Liara? Shepard asked. The Asari strode over to her hushed monitors and flicked her finger across a control to turn one on. Shepard moved closer, peering over her friend's shoulder. Her eyes widened. Is that? The elusive man's base, Liara affirmed. She touched a thumb and forefinger to the screen and spread them, causing the image to zoom in. There was the elusive man's chair. It was overturned. Behind it, Shepard could see the body of Kai Lang, still laying where she had left it when she had killed the hated assassin. Shepard could still remember plunging her Omniblade into his side when he tried to strike her from behind. It's still in one piece, Shepard breathed, touching the screen and moving her fingers across to pan around the room, empty and still. Hackett's ships had been attacking it, but pulled back when they got the call that the Citadel had reached Earth and the final battle had begun, Liara explained. The final battle, Shepard thought. Again she felt uneasy. Perhaps not so final. Have you seen anyone there? She asked. Not yet. Liara sighed, sitting down in her chair, resting her chin in one hand. I'll keep my eyes on it, that's for certain. It's not as if I have anything else to do. I'm sorry about this, Liara. Shepard turned and met her friend's eyes. We've lost so much, Shepard, she said, her voice tight. Can we come back from this? Shepard sighed, leaning against the desk, with her back to the screen. I do know we can't give up hope. The second we give up is the second we have truly failed. You're always so determined, Shepard. Liara smiled. This time the smile reached her eyes. I was thinking bull-headed, she corrected playfully.